Well, hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here today for Friday Reads. Can you believe it's already Friday Reads time once again? So, I'm probably going to do a quick video today because it has been a really busy day. It is going to continue to be a really busy day, but I just wanted to check in with the reading week that has been, talk a little bit about the progress I've made. I did finish one book and go from there. But I do want to make a quick comment because I saw a video from Jason over at Oblu's Chapter and Verse. I will link his profile down below, where he talked about YouTube comments. This is something that was picked up by his wife and by Steve Donahue and Brian over at Bookish. Basically, somebody kind of commented about his weight, and that's so there's a larger conversation to be had out there about comment etiquette and things like that. I have been very fortunate. I have not had a whole lot of instances like that, but I did see discussion of it, so I wanted to kind of bring that out. And like I said, I'll link to the video where Jason discusses that experience down below. And I just think it's difficult because I have occasionally had somebody comment on, let's say, my appearance or say something nasty about that, but it doesn't happen much. And I think especially in this time period, it's really difficult because I'll be honest with you, I've gained almost 15 pounds in the last year. Is that good? No. And it's been difficult because usually I work from home, but I do manage to get out of the house a fair amount, walking the dogs, going into town, do hikes, things like that. And since lockdown last year, I don't get out to do as much of that. And that means that I'm a lot more sedentary, and that's not good for you. So I have not successfully changed my eating habits. My eating habits have been exactly the same, but I'm definitely not as active, and it catches up to you. Hopefully, if the pandemic gets under control soon, that I'll be able to go back to the gym. We'll be able to get out of the house a whole lot more, and that will change. But for now, I'm just trying to find ways. Brian at Bookish talked about this in his last Saturday Hodgepodge as well, where it's just trying to find things where you get up during the day when you might ordinarily stay seated, or even just sometimes when I'm up, I force myself to stretch. So it's a larger, like I said, I haven't had too many problems with it on my channel, so I don't really want to focus on the negative aspect of it, because odds are if you're watching this, you're probably not doing it. But there's a good conversation out there, and I think Jason's video is a good starting point for that. Again, I will link it down below. The other thing I wanted to check in on is captions. I had mentioned that I am trying to do, my channel goal for this year is to do more captions, and I've kind of fallen off the wagon because, as I mentioned previously, it's a time-consuming process. And being something of a perfectionist, I want to insert proper punctuation and things like that. So it takes a really long time. And I've kind of fallen off the wagon with it over the last week, but I'm going to try to get back to it because I do think it's important. So the only other thing is my t-shirt. My last 3 Friday Reads videos, I've worn new t-shirts that I got, and I'm really pleased with all of them. This one is a bookstore window. Very excited about it. And yes, that makes me think of the Christmas Village. Yes, it's still here. Yes, it's still lit. It makes me happy. And that's just the way it's going to be. So let's get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. Like I said, I did finish a book this week. It is not the book I was supposed to be finishing. Basically, I was having a bit of a hard time getting started. And we'll talk about that book in a second. And I kind of needed something fast, something a little bit easy. If you follow along, you know that frequently in those situations, I reach for Sue Grafton. In this case, I reached for Joan Didion and read Let Me Tell You What I Mean, which is a new collection of previously unpublished essays by her. They start out very bite-sized, like maybe a page and a half, 2 pages, and then they steadily get longer as the collection progresses. It starts in the 1968, I believe, and the most recent essay is mid-2000, I believe, about Martha Stewart, and that is the one that people tend to talk about the most with this collection. I am a huge Joan Didion fan, but I have never actually read her fiction, and she writes a lot about fiction writing in this book, and what she has to say about it is actually fascinating. And I've heard mixed things about her fiction, so I'm very curious. If have you read any of Joan Didion's fiction? If so, let me know in the comment section down below, because I'm very curious right now. And I think what's really interesting about this collection is that she talks about how you can't really take the author's voice out of their writing, which is something that I believe I know I've said it on this channel before, because people were like, oh, you have to separate the politics and the writer. But in this, she kind of talks about how the writer structures what you see, frames what you see, points you toward things, and so to the point where everything you read is through the lens of the writer. And she has some really interesting, just fascinating things to say about that. And even as she's writing nonfiction, she's very aware of it. And there's so many really interesting examples of that throughout. She is very aware of this sort of artificial reality of writing, of photography, of particularly she talks about this in the other areas in the Martha Stewart section, where she talks about like television and presenting and things like that. And it's just really interesting. There's a portion where she interviews Nancy Reagan, and I've seen some criticism online where they talk about, well, she talks about interviewing Nancy Reagan before Nancy Reagan was the first lady. She talks about Martha Stewart before Martha Stewart was indicted. But I think that kind of misses the point. I think Joan Didion is such a good writer and such an observational person that she zeroes in on really interesting things. And in fact, in the Martha Stewart section, she talks about what would happen to Martha Stewart Omnimedia if Martha Stewart's reputation was damaged. And that's really interesting. But in the Nancy Reagan chapter, she's talking about how she's supposed to be spending a day in the life with Nancy Reagan, and her article is supposed to take that focus. And she's there the same day as some TV producers who are supposed to be doing the same thing, like a day in the life of Nancy Reagan. But they're just kind of sitting around, and instead of letting her just do what she would do throughout the day, producers are even like throwing out suggestions. They're like, well, would you do some gardening? And of course, Nancy Reagan's like, yeah, I can do some gardening. And they very deliberately pick what flowers she should be cutting while they ask her questions. And Nancy Reagan, being very aware of aesthetics, she was a former actress. She was married to a former actor. Grabs a flower basket that is far too small for the rhododendrons that she's carrying, but it's just all about the image. And so Joan Didion is kind of observing all of this going on, and she's not condemning it. She's not saying anything bad about it, but she is very much putting it out there for you that even this glimpse of Nancy Reagan is artificial because cameras are there, but it's even more artificial because the producer of the TV show is feeding her suggestions and saying, stand this way for the light and things like that. So it becomes less and less natural as it all progresses. And I really enjoyed that. She has really interesting things to say about writing and her process of it. I'm just a huge fan of Joan Didion. And it's a very short collection. I read it in a single afternoon. I just kind of devoured it. And it really just enhanced my adoration of her as a writer. I've read The Year of Magical Thinking, which is a fantastic book. I've read Blue Nights. And in high school, I read Slouching Toward Bethlehem. And I really need to reread that at some point. I took a class in high school called Literature of Our Place, and that was in San Francisco. So the place was California. And I don't think we read all of Slouching Toward Bethlehem, but we definitely read a lot of the essays that are in it. And it's just such an interesting book. And that's actually all I've read of Joan Didion's. But I've always really respected her as a writer and found her really fascinating. I remember I worked one holiday season at the Barnes & Noble in Union Square in New York City. And that was the year that Blue Nights was released, and she did a signing on a night that I was working, and that happened a lot. I did not manage to get up there and hear any of the what she said during the signing, but I did manage to get a signed copy of Blue Nights. I have it, I believe, in my library. That happened a lot. Diane Keaton also did a signing that year for a book that she was releasing. I'm forgetting the title of it. And I managed to connive my way up to the top floor where the author events were. And I managed to hear a little bit of what she was saying. And it was really interesting because she just had the entire room wrapped around her finger, and she was just telling stories at the podium. It was fascinating. There is not much that makes me miss New York, but I do miss those author events at Barnes & Noble in Union Square. So that is what I finished. It's Let Me Tell You What I Mean by Joan Didion. I definitely recommend it. And like I said, if you have read her fiction, please leave a comment down below. and let me know what you thought, because I'm kind of thinking that maybe I should stalk my local used bookstore and see if any of her stuff turns up. The book I was supposed to be reading when I picked up Let Me Tell You What I Mean was The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. I remembered to grab my dust jacket of it this week. I ordered the UK version of it because I liked this cover better than the US one. The US one kind of looks like bad clip art to me. The Canadian one is very somber. I believe it's just the photo of like an iron door with a seal. But this is just pretty. Anyway, it's for the BookTube Prize, so I can't really tell you what I'm thinking of it. I did not make it far, though, I can tell you that. And I think I made it maybe 35, 40 pages in and was really feeling reluctant to pick it up. And not any fault of the book. And again, I can't really say anything because it's for the BookTube Prize and I can't tell you what I'm thinking of those books until the round is over. But it was nothing to do with the book and a lot to do with the size and the subject matter. And I kind of realized something. So I have read The Prettiest Star, which is about a man dying of AIDS in the 80s. The Prophets, which is about two enslaved men who are in love with each other on a plantation in the pre-Civil War. And it's about slavery, it's about racism and homophobia and a lot of really heavy stuff. And I kind of needed an emotional break before diving into something else that's really heavy and requires a lot of thought. Hence, let me tell you what I mean. And even since I finished Let Me Tell You What I Mean, I've still had a hard time picking this one up. So I think what I need to do is I'm gonna just for the weekend put this down, maybe read something else. Ordinarily in cases like this, I would pick up Sue Grafton book. But I think what I might do now is I have 2 or 3 books that I have available on NetGalley. I might just read one of them. And I also have this book that I'm not going to say the name of, but I'll hold it up because if you follow along. I once had a video get flagged for language, and I was able to appeal it and have the decision reversed, but I'm so terrified of language. And I curse or anything on this channel, but I'm so terrified of language that I don't want to say what the title is. But I might pick this up. It's a collection of graphic novels by Alison Bechdel. And I'm thinking this weekend might be the perfect time to pick it up. And because as any kind of graphic novel, graphic memoir, it will probably read very quickly. And hopefully by the time I'm done, I'll be ready mentally and emotionally and everything to jump into The Mirror and the Light. By the way, notice I keep blocking my face. I can't win. The lighting was weird on the couch, so I said, I'll just film over here again. And now every time I'm going to stop playing with the shadow. But anyway, can't win is the point. So that's my plan right now. Put this down for the weekend, get back to it next week. And maybe next week I will be able to tell you about this one if I have finished it. If I have finished something on NetGalley, I will be able to tell you about that one instead. So in terms of listening, I started out the week listening to Just As I Am by Cicely Tyson, but then I realized that the hold I had on Real Life by Brandon Taylor was about to end. And I was actually enjoying the audiobook, so I kind of wanted to stick with that format, even though I have a physical copy of the book. So I ended up listening to this a lot over the last 2 days. And I think by tonight I will be done. And I can't tell you what I think of it because this is another book that is for the BookTube Prize. I am judging Group E. I'm a Group E in fiction, so I have The Mirror and the Light, Real Life, Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh, Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell, Luster by Raven Leilani, and American Dirt by Janine Cummins. So I can't tell you what I'm thinking about this, but I will be done with it by tonight, which is good because it will be automatically returned tomorrow. So stay tuned. I will be telling you a lot more about this one once this round of the BookTube Prize is over, but I'm almost done with this. I'm at the finish line for that, and it feels good. It does feel good to have made some progress on an audiobook. The other audiobook, as I said, was Just As I Am by Cicely Tyson. Still really enjoying that book. It's very fascinating. I'm still at the point where she's talking about her childhood. She is into her adolescence now. Seems very open and honest and reflective, and if you follow along, I mentioned a fair amount that I tend not to like celebrity memoirs because I feel like celebrities and politicians, any known person, tend to they tend to filter the details a little bit. They're trying to present an image of themselves. So they don't really want to talk about any of the negatives, like bad things they did, bad things that were done to them, anything like that. And Cicely Tyson is very open and honest. She talks about times in which, as a developing girl, she was treated oddly in a sexual way or sexualized by other people. She talks a lot about race, and she talks about her relationship with her parents and their difficult relationship with each other. And she has a very charming voice. I know there is either not a co-writer, but like or there's a credited writer that she worked with. So clearly she had a little bit of help, but it's like somebody telling you a story, and it's like them telling you a story in a really interesting way. She's kind of a natural in that regard, and I'm very much enjoying it. I look forward to getting back to it once I am done with Real Life. I have kind of decided that there are 2 other books that I'm supposed to read for the BookTube Prize that I am going to listen to on audio as well. My original plan was to read all of them in physical form, but for just make things easy on myself, I'm going to do Real Life on that one. And the other 2 are Luster by Raven Leilani and American Dirt by Janine Cummins. I'll do those 2 on audio as well, but I think I want to finish Just As I Am first. So that is pretty much the Friday reads. Going to try to keep it short today, and that's everything I've finished, been working on. Hopefully we'll be finishing soon. If you have thoughts about anything I've said, recommendations, what have you, please, the comment section is down there. I'm a little bit behind on comments because of how busy this week was as well, so I apologize. I'm going to try to get caught up again. It's kind of a repeating thing that happens. Anyway, as always, I really appreciate you following along, watching this, especially if you've made it to this point, and especially if you subscribe. I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.